Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Reardon. I am the Horticulture Small Farms Extension Agent for Johnson County. What that means is I help people with growing fruits and vegetables. So this month, with that, Chelsea Reinberg's joining us. We are going to be discussing blueberries with you. And that's quite great timing, actually, because it is blueberry harvesting season. So what better time to be talking about it? So I will go ahead and share my slides, and we will jump right in here. Okay, so I always like to start these off with sharing a few publications that can help you out with your own home operations, because that's probably why a lot of people are watching right now, right? To figure out how they can do this on their own. While K-State does not have their own specific fruit production guide, there is the Midwest Home Fruit Production Guide, which K-State is a collaborator on with several other Midwest universities. So this is listed specifically on OSU's website. You can purchase a copy through our office. They're about $40, but you can also order it online if that is what you would like to do, and it may be a little bit cheaper for you if you do that. There are also a lot of great publications out there. One of the ones that I based a lot of this presentation off of was from the University of Minnesota, so they've got a lot of great information there as well. Just keep in mind that as far away as the publications are from the location you're trying to grow, some of the cultural factors are going to change. Obviously, up in Minnesota, it's a lot colder, so you wouldn't want to look at the varieties of the plants that they're recommending because it just wouldn't apply to here in Kansas City. So, a bit of an overview on blueberries. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that your pH is going to be absolutely vital in your soil when it comes to keeping these plants alive. Blueberries are not native to this area at all, so you really do kind of have to baby them to keep them thriving here. That said, it's not impossible. There are some instances where they've been able to absolutely thrive. You just really have to stay on top of it. It's going to have to be one of those plants that you're willing to put in the meticulous care for. Also, keep in mind, you need at least two varieties of blueberries in order to produce fruit. So you can't just buy one shrub. You need at least two, and it needs to be at least two different types of shrubs because you do need that cross-pollination to exist for the fruit to develop. They are also going to be slow growers and producers. We'll talk about that a bit, but it's really not until the third year that you're even supposed to be getting fruits off of your plants. And it takes a while for them to establish and to grow large and to really become something that is a producer for you. And as I mentioned, that maintenance schedule is just you really have to stay on top of it to keep them thriving. So diving right into the soil, as I mentioned, it prefers an acidic soil from 4.0 to 5.0. And here in Kansas City, we average a neutral to alkaline soil. So that means we are at 7.0 to 8.0. So you absolutely have to work with a soil amendment in order to be able to get your soil to a point where it works with your plants. Because as the soil is too alkaline, what it's going to do is it's going to lock in the nutrients in the soil. So you may have plenty of all of your phosphorus and potassium and anything that needs to be absorbed right there present in the ground. But if it is too alkaline, the plant itself is not going to be able to absorb it. So bringing that alkalinity down to a more acidic soil, specifically in your blueberries case, but in any case, to the ideal pH range is going to make it so the nutrients and the fertilizer can actually be absorbed. Um, so, conducting a soil test is going to be absolutely essential when it comes to planting your blueberries, and that's a very simple process. If you're a Johnson County resident, we actually offer one free soil test per resident per year. And all you'd have to do is go to the corners of the area that you're trying to test, as well as the center, and pull a single cup of soil from each of those spots. Mix that soil together in a bucket, and then 2 cups of what that mixture is, just a mixture, is what you would put into a Ziploc bag, bring that to the extension office. We are here at 119th and Ridgeview, and you would just fill out a form, and it would be about 6 weeks, and you would get your results back, and it would tell you the exact amendments that you would need to add to your soil to make it perfect for growing blueberries. I will say when you are amending for blueberries, and because it is a pH adjustment, It's not going to be an immediate fix. It's going to take several treatments over quite an extended period of time. So I know a lot of people, when they start amending for blueberries, it might be a year in advance or even a year and a half in advance because you're going to have to, it's not going to just be adding that amendment one time. It's going to be adding in the fall, adding in the spring, and kind of continually doing that until you can incrementally get your pH down to where you need it to be. Also, sphagnum peat moss is generally incorporated with the sulfur that you'd be using to lower your pH. And that is because it is an organic acidic material. So that's going to help you out as well. And we'll talk quite extensively about soil and kind of soil isolation when it comes to your blueberries, because you have to keep in mind, even if that one particular spot you are amending to be acidic, it is still surrounded by soil that is alkaline. So that is going to eventually leach into that area and raise the alkalinity of the soil back up. Also, the water table here is alkaline. So every time you water your plants, you're going to be raising your pH of that plant back up. So it's not a one and done situation or a one and done fix. You have to continually keep adding amendments, really year after year with your blueberries to keep it down in that ideal acidic range. Because of this, this is why you'd want to consider a containerized situation, because that is going to completely isolate your growing material or your growing soil. And then you won't have those leaching from the sides issues, at least. You would still have to address the water issue, but it wouldn't be as intense. One case study that I wanted to highlight here, we have our backyard garden, which is located at south of Olathe at the Research and Extension Center. And this is one of our 9 demonstration gardens with the Johnson County Extension Master Gardeners. They do have tours available by appointment if you'd like to check it out there. This is just a small piece. They have a bunch of display gardens as far as fruits and vegetables out there. And what they have growing here is 4 different cultivars of shrubs that produce very well. And they've been around for about 10, 15 years now. So they're really kind of thriving in the area. But the way they were able to achieve this is they actually planted them in pots in the ground. And those pots kind of disintegrated over time. And we've, learned in years past that's probably not the best method because depending on what the pot composition is, that it could potentially contaminate your soil. That wasn't the case here. But you do have to kind of watch how it's being put into the ground and be meticulous about everything that's being put around it. In this case, this almost completely isolated soil that was being planted into the ground still. So you have that barrier there preventing the outside leaching from coming in. And this location, they do their yearly amendments with both sulfur and sphagnum peat moss to keep that pH in an ideal range for the shrubs. So there's such a thing as containerized blueberries as well. And in this case, what you'd want to be looking at is a minimum of 20 gallons. I know that sounds large. So I would say either look at cloth bags, large planters, large pots, or you could even be looking at a container garden type of situation. But again, that is going to help with isolating that soil and keeping that pH just a little bit more contained. Um, but remember as well that in any kind of raised bed or pot or planter situation, it's going to dry out much quicker, and moisture is going to be key with your shrubs. So you're really going to have to stay on top of your irrigation. Mulching is obviously going to help as well because that's just going to help with both your soil temperature regulation and keeping your weeds suppressed and then obviously with the moisture retention. We do recommend to kind of use or try to aim for your northern varieties because those are going to be a little bit more adapted to this area and our conditions. And so you may be asking, well, what about all these pictures I see with tiny pots? These aren't 20 gallons, but here's a blueberry shrub that's thriving. It's not ideal. And that is because it's never going to establish long term for you. And we'll talk about that more in a bit here. But essentially, what happens with your shrubs is you're not even supposed to let the berries produce for the first 2 years. You're supposed to let them just establish and spend their time getting acquainted with the ground and growing and bushing out, and then they can start producing berries for you. In this scenario, you will never have all of the moisture and nutrients needed for a really healthy surviving shrub. So you might get some short-term berries, but it might be one season and done. So as far as some recommended varieties, these are from the publication that K-State has. So there's Blue Crop, Blue Jay, Blue Ray, Duke, and Patriots. The traits you're going to be looking for, they're going to be vigorous, they're going to be upright, very productive. Fruit size can also be a big thing, and then heat tolerance is probably also one you're going to want to be looking for. So all of these have been recommended, but just kind of depending on all of the traits you're looking for. That's how you would want to go about choosing them. And again, you do need at least two varieties, so you can kind of diversify the selections that you make. When it comes to planting blueberries itself, it should have been done probably a little bit earlier than now. We say early spring, so March through April is the best time. You can do bare root plants or you can do potted plants, but the biggest thing is to ensure that the roots are staying moist the entire time, because it is a shrub that is going to kind of dry out and wilt on you very quickly. And you want to try to place it into a full sun location. Know that these are going to be a long-term planting, so don't put it next to a tree that might grow up another 10 feet in the next 10 years, because by the time your shrub's fully producing, it might get shaded out and then it's not able to produce anymore. So really just a wide open space would probably be your best bet. That 6+ hours of direct sunlight is going to be essential for your flowering and fruit development. And then some afternoon shade, I will say, if you can provide that, that may help you out a bit when it comes to just some of the sunburn or heat stress problems that you can experience sometimes. So particularly if you have a really hot microclimate or you are trying to do, say, potted shrub situation, or you're trying to grow it, say, on a patio, putting it in a spot where it gets late afternoon shade can help you out little bit more on planting. So in general, anytime you are planting a shrub, you're going to want to try to dig the hole 3 times the width of the root ball. The biggest thing to keep in mind here is that you want the bottom of that hole to be firm, because if it is not firm, it is going to sink down, is going to keep sinking down, and then all of a sudden your mulch and your soil and anything that you add as a soil amendment is going to be piling up against the trunk of your shrub, and eventually any of that material that's up against the bark is going to instigate rot in the bark. And as the bark rots, you then cut off the cambium where sap flow happens and the shrub dies. So that is why we say don't ever mulch against your trees or your shrubs. There should always be donuts, not volcanoes. And yeah, just be a little bit aware of what could come as a result of doing certain practices. Um, space your shrubs apart according to the ultimate size. I would say at least 5 feet apart per shrub is probably about ideal. But then remembering as well that you want your harvest space, so you need to be able to get between the shrubs. And blueberries in particular are going to have a lot of produce growing in weird spots. So you need to have room to be able to maneuver between those shrubs to get to those weird spots and get your berries. Uh, you do want to be sure as well when you're planting to cover the roots with 3 to 4 inches of soil. And then when you are mulching, I would try to aim for an acidic mulch as well. So there's pine needles, pine bark, peat moss. There are certain wood chips that are acidic depending on the tree they come from, oak leaves, etc. There's lots of variety out there, but I'd say anything you can do to introduce that incremental acidity to that garden area is going to help you out in achieving that ideal pH. So as I mentioned, during the first 2 years, you're actually not supposed to be letting your blueberries produce the fruits. So the recommended practice is to go in and hand pick off any of the flowers that are developing. And the reason we do this is because the shrub is just trying to survive at this point. It is going to allocate way too much of its energy towards fruit production during those first 2 years, and it may die during the winter if you don't pick these berries off at this time. So essentially, we're just letting the plant direct all of its energy towards establishing, because once it has that deep root system and it's just well incorporated into the ground, it's going to be much more resilient to our weather conditions. Then upon that 3rd year, you can go ahead and leave your flowers and allow it to start fruiting. So a little bit more on fertilizing and pH. If you do have too high of a pH, you're going to start seeing issues such as chlorosis, where basically it's a light or lime green leaf color with dark veins. You're going to see slowed growth in the plant in general. There's going to be very poor fruiting, and you may even start seeing some plant failure. So those are all signs that your pH is too high. They don't work fast, so just remember that yeah, it's best to just stay ahead of it the entire time. And then, as far as generalized fertilizing goes, a low range, slow release balanced fertilizer like a 10-10-10 with your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, that's going to provide it with plenty of the nutrients it needs as it continues growing. When it comes to pruning blueberries, you want to prune in spring after the first year. Fruit is produced on 1-year-old wood as well, so that is something to keep in mind. So do not remove the shoots that are popping up because you say, "Oh, this is new. I don't want new growth in here." If you do that, you're going to be removing all of your fruiting buds from last that developed last year. So your older canes would be the ones that you kind of aim for when it comes to thinning, just because those ones won't be producing as much anymore. Prune to maintain vigor and to maintain shape, but keep 4 to 6 healthy old stems to maintain form and to prevent overbearing, where too much fruit is being produced at once, because that can be a thing where it's just too much fruit for the plant to actually be able to sustain it long term or to be able to really survive it. And then when it comes to harvesting your blueberries, the fruit bearing usually begins in the plant's third year, and it can last for 8 to 10 years, but it can last even longer if you're really meticulous with taking care of them. For the best harvest or ripe harvest, you want to harvest the berries when they are completely blue. So you'll see them pink sometimes, or you see them still green. Those are indicators that it's just not quite ripe yet. There are a couple of varieties that are supposed to be pink, so you do need to watch your variety type. But ultimately, if it's fully blue, that is your good indicator. It's ripe and it's ready and it's sweet and it's not going to be too tart for you. So gently remove those and do that only a few at a time because they can be crushed pretty easily, especially when you're putting them into baskets and you're collecting them. You only want to create a layer that's maybe a few inches or a couple inches and then start another basket because if you're piling, say, a foot of berries on top of each other, those ones on the bottom are likely to get squished. There are a few nuisance insects. Japanese beetles and spotted wing Drosophila are two of the bigger ones. The thing with Japanese beetle, they recommend hormone traps, but I'd put a big caveat on that if you are a home gardener, because hormone traps specifically, well, their job is to attract beetles, right? So instead of diminishing your population, you may be getting every beetle that is in the neighborhood coming to your yard because they smell those hormones. So really, only if you can keep it far away from your plants would I recommend those. And then along those lines, you do need to keep in mind that hormone traps, they are beneficial. What they do is they essentially they deplete the population of the bugs so that they cannot lay eggs or create larvae that turn into more beetles. So over time and over years, you will be depleting the population of those Japanese beetles in the area. But in the short term, it's not going to be helping your plants very much. So hand picking them and throwing them in soapy water is probably the most effective method. You could also try trap cropping. And that is because there are certain plants that certain pests like to eat more than others. So if you say buy just a couple of grape plants that you have no intention of ever harvesting or taking care of, and you plant them near your blueberries, the Japanese beetle are much more likely to go to your grape plants and not to your blueberries because they like to eat grapes more than many types of plants. And that leaves you open to doing whatever you want to that plant. You can spray it with your chemicals so long as you're following instructions and you're willing to do that and make sure you're reading your labels and protecting your pollinators. But also you can just destroy the plant in general. And that would eliminate it. Or again, you would know that they'd be there for the hand picking, so you could go that method. As far as your spotted wing Drosophila, harvest frequently. That's going to help you out a lot. What they do is they're attracted to the fruit itself. So just getting that harvest out of there, removing and destroying fallen fruit because that rotting fruit smell is going to attract them. Mesh netting may also be an option. And really, with birds, you're going to want to try mesh netting anyway. We'll talk about that. But if you are wanting to go an organic route, you could try spinosad or an organic pyrethrin. So, speaking of netting, birds are going to be one of your biggest nuisances when it comes to blueberries. They love to pick off the blueberries and eat them, just like really kind of any of your bearing shrubs. But what you can do is build some kind of a mesh netting structure around it, and then just make sure that the netting itself is very fine and that it's very visible. Because as much as we want to prevent birds, we don't want them getting caught in the net itself and then dying. So you need to make sure that it's fully visible to the birds so they don't get caught in it. And then you'll want to make sure as well to be pinning the net down around the edges so that other creatures can't get in. Because it's not just going to be your birds, it's also going to be squirrels, deer, rabbits, whatever you have. A few other conditions. So disease is not very common in your blueberries, actually. So if you are experiencing disease issues or what you believe is a disease issue, you can always reach out to the extension office and we can try to help you identify that. The one thing that is a little bit more common is cankers, as you see here in this photo on the right. And that just looks like a lesion on the side. And it can be caused by so many different things. It's pretty much any kind of a pest can cause a lesion, meaning your viruses, bacteria, fungi, or even insect feeding. But with that, the best method of getting rid of it is just to prune it out as soon as you find it. Hopefully, it's not on a main stem, but pruning it out will prevent any kind of disease from spreading. And then finally, something fun here. Did you know indigenous peoples were the first to utilize blueberries extensively in their diets? So that would be people here in America. And they were not only a staple of their diet, but they used them for textile dyes and they even dried them for winter usage. So they definitely made a lot of use out of them. So with that, I will open it up to questions real quick and I will let Chelsea go ahead and start getting ready. One question here does say, I add coffee grounds to the garden bed. Does that help? It actually does. Coffee grounds are a little bit acidic. So, yeah, that would indeed be helping with just that incremental addition of acid to your ground area. You could even try maybe orange peels or something along those lines, or citrus peels in general. Anything that's going to be adding acid to that pH count. Another one says, can you plant blueberries near walnut trees? Are they impacted by chemical juglone? Can you use walnut tree mulch? I would I would need to look into that one specifically, but I would imagine they are probably impacted by juglone. So I would try to avoid the walnut tree areas and any kind of soil that's impacted by that. Okay, well, with that, I will hand it over to Chelsea.
All right. Can you see my screen okay, Anthony?
Yes, you are great.
Okay. My name is Chelsea Reinberg, and I'm the Nutrition, Food Safety, and Health Agent here in the Extension Office. I cover everything related to what you do with the food after you grow it. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about blueberries, the nutrition benefits, as well as how to preserve it and some recipes for you. So why should we eat blueberries? You might find a theme that every time we talk about our fruits and vegetables, I always say they're a nutrition powerhouse because they really are. All of our fruits and vegetables are such a good staple ingredient to our diet that we should be consuming every day. Blueberries are no exception. We have 1 cup of blueberries is going to be about 84 calories and 22 grams of carbohydrates. They're obviously a low protein food, but they are high in fiber at about 3.5 grams per cup. They are a 15 grams of sugar. So they are one of the lower sugar fruits when we think about 1 cup is quite a large quantity. And again, we are focusing on healthy natural sugars from our fruits, and therefore there's no added sugars in the blueberries unless you are making a jam or other sort of sweet dessert with it. They are 84% water. So again, a good source of not only do they provide the nutrition, but during the summertime when it's hot out, we need to make sure that we're staying hydrated. And so eating all of our very high water foods are going to be a good addition to make sure that we are getting enough fluids to also keep us healthy during the summer months. They're a good source of vitamin C, vitamin K, folate, potassium, and antioxidants, specifically anthocyanins, which are about 60% of all of the antioxidants, the phytochemicals in blueberries are those. Blueberries are growing in popularity. In 2010, the per capita consumption was 34 ounces per person. And then in 2023, it rose to about 70.3 ounces. And so this represents a 106.7 increase since 2010. And this was done from an analysis of domestic markets from the High Bush Blueberry Council in 2024. Here's another chart from the USDA looking at, this was from 2023, just looking at, again, US data on consumption. And as you can see, the trends kind of increasing there and significantly rising, kind of hitting that early 2008, 2009 mark, and really just increasing steadily since then. Part of that popularity of the increase in blueberries is the term superfoods and how blueberries have been termed a superfood. Blueberries became popular in that 1990s and early 2000s range with a 1.6 increase in consumption. And this was because the health information and health research has kind of came out that blueberries are a great addition and can really help keep you healthy. They have been termed what we call a superfood. But really, what a superfood is, it's just a catchy marketing title, and it really has no scientific definition that is kind of accepted from all different organizations, from nonprofit world to like USDA and other health agencies across the world. But it is associated with the presumptive health benefits. So it's saying that there is something above and beyond maybe other fruits and vegetables that has these additional health benefits. And so that's kind of what a superfood is. There is a definition from Merriam-Webster that defines superfood as a food such as salmon, broccoli, or blueberries that is rich in compounds such as antioxidants, fiber, or fatty acids that are considered beneficial to a person's health. Based on that definition, honestly, I would say that all fruits and vegetables are superfoods just because they're all super rich in antioxidants, fiber, and different health benefits. Eating a variety is key though. So when we talk about superfoods, you can eat all the blueberries you want and focus on them, but really they will provide nutrition, but it's really that balanced diet that we're talking about, and eating a variety is key. Blueberries have a lot of anthocyanins, but they are missing other antioxidants or other vitamins and minerals that are important for our diet. So we do need to make sure that we are providing a variety and not getting caught up on the term superfoods and focusing kind of on one specific food, but rather incorporating lots of what we call, quote, superfoods into our diet, as well as others that might not be as superfood definition worthy. So the health benefits of blueberries. Blueberries have been shown to reduce the risk of certain chronic diseases, specifically looking at cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. There's a lot of research on those, and that consumption of them has improved health benefits and health outcomes, whether it's reversing type 2 diabetes or whether it's preventing cardiovascular disease from progressing. There has also been a lot of research on the health benefits of blueberries toward cognitive function. And so some studies have looked at task switching and memory, and that those who consumed blueberries often had improved cognitive function compared to those who did not. Other studies, specifically animal studies at this time, have looked at the impact of blueberries on delaying Alzheimer's. And so, again, this is just in animal studies, but a lot of the research that looks at human health and the health benefits of certain foods does start out in kind of animal studies to prove that proof of concept. And so, again, more research is needed, but there is some indication that it could be beneficial, not only on the cognitive prevention, but also the delaying of Alzheimer's. Improved insulin sensitivity. So individuals who have prediabetes or diabetes, by consuming sufficient blueberries, and this is blueberries every day, basically, they have improved insulin sensitivity, meaning that their body is able to respond and to decrease kind of that blood sugars. Other benefits, we have reduced cell damage. So we know that antioxidants help to scavenge free radicals that ultimately produce that cell damage. So reducing the cell damage helps to keep us healthy overall, helps with signs of aging, just kind of general health and well-being. Improved weight maintenance. So we know, as I mentioned in the previous slides, that blueberries are a high fiber food. So at 3.5 grams per cup, we know that they can contribute a large portion of our fiber if we consume them every day. And we know that consuming adequate fiber, meeting our dietary guidelines of anywhere from 25 to 35 grams per day, we have better weight control. Improved plasma lipids, again, this is looking at our blood cholesterols, our LDL, our cholesterol, our triglycerides, and HDL. All of those have been improved by individuals who regularly consume blueberries. And then anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. Again, just that overall health and well-being, prevention of cancer has been shown to have associations with a high antioxidant diet. The interesting thing, though, is when we talk about quantity, research has shown that really as low as a third cup blueberries daily is associated with reduced risk of disease. So this is insignificant. I talked about the nutrition benefit or the nutrition components of 1 cup, but 1 cup might seem like a lot to somebody to consume in a day. But as little of a third cup, which is really about a handful of blueberries every day, can help to keep you healthy and reduce disease risk. Now, when we talk about the impact of cooking of blueberries, eating fresh blueberries obviously is going to have a great impact. We know that we're getting all of the nutrition, we're getting all of those antioxidants, all of the vitamins and minerals. So I wanted to kind of share a little bit about if you do decide to cook blueberries, whether it is baked in the oven in blueberry muffins, whether you heat them in a sauce, whatever it may be. There was some research that looked at the impacts of microwave and oven. And so you'll see here that microwave treatments were found to lead to the highest loss of polyphenols compared to baking and boiling. So that basically means that if you are going to heat blueberries, we want to avoid any microwave treatments as that tend to zap most of that healthy polyphenols or antioxidants. However, the differences of concentrations in most of the anthocyanins in blueberries at the different baking treatments of 5, 10, and 15 minutes were not statistically different, meaning that anthocyanins really do remain stable at a certain degree of loss. So once you have that loss, if you have to cook muffins for 20 minutes, you're not going to have a significant increase in a loss of anthocyanins. It really plateaus and kind of has that baseline that's lost during the heat treatment, but then the rest are maintained. So in short, if we're going to be heating blueberries, doing a treatment like our baking or cooking versus microwaving is going to be our better options. We know that blueberries come in many different forms, whether you are purchasing blueberries from the grocery store or whether you are growing your own blueberries. Maybe it takes a little bit for your blueberries to produce. As Anthony said, it really is 2 years before you kind of get fruit. So therefore, you may be purchasing blueberries from other sources, whether it's your farmer's market or the grocery store. We do want to find fresh blueberries. Again, they're going to be the most nutritious. So our peak season here, obviously, as indicated, June through September. Frozen is another great option. We know that blueberries are not available in December in the fresh form here in Kansas. If they are, it's because they've been shipped in from other locations. So therefore, picking your fresh and freezing them is a great way to preserve those nutrients. You can find canned blueberries in different forms at the grocery stores or canning your own. We do want to be aware of added sugars for those. You can have dried blueberries. The dried blueberries do have the greatest loss of those anthocyanins, meaning that drying process, because it usually takes an extended period of time and there's heat treatment involved, does mean that those healthy antioxidants, those anthocyanins, are the least in all of the different forms that you may be purchasing or consuming your blueberries. And again, the dried often have added sugar. There are freeze-dried blueberries, whether you freeze-dry your own, if you have that equipment or you purchase them. This has been shown to preserve those anthocyanins more compared to your conventional kind of drying process. And then again, you have your juices and purees. Generally with these, you're going to have a loss of some vitamins and minerals and some of the anthocyanins as well, because they're often heat treated during that process, or you just lose some of that through the fiber and the nutrients and the loss. Now, blueberries are such a versatile fruit, like most fruits, but it's one of those that I say is it's a perfect size where it's a bite size. It really can be used in many different culinary recipes that you might be having. Adding to your cereal, eating by the handful, sprinkling on salads. So your strawberries and blueberries tend to be the best berries that go with your salads. Making a smoothie, adding to your pancake, muffin, and waffle batter mixes is another great option to incorporate those fresh berries, maybe from your garden, into your different foods. Yogurt, oatmeal, obviously making any of your homemade jams and jellies or homemade syrups. The possibilities are endless for how you can use blueberries. Blueberry and lemon tend to go very well together for a very spring and summer kind of palette. So that's kind of that picture in the right bottom hand corner. Now, preserving blueberries. Hopefully you get a bumper crop after you have planted and your blueberries have grown. And therefore you want to make sure that you're preserving your blueberries so that you can have your fresh blueberries all year round. With blueberries, you may use water bath or pressure canning methods. Again, a lot of times you might have to choose between one or the other based on what the recipe is, but there is recommendations and instructions for both the water bath or the pressure canning method. Processing times for your water bath are about 15 minutes for pints or 20 minutes for quarts. And then if you're doing pressure canning, that's 8 minutes or 10 minutes for pints and quarts, respectively. You will need to adjust, obviously, for your altitude. So do check your altitude to make sure if you're over 1,000 feet. Most of our locations in Johnson County fall below that, but there are a couple locations that are just right over 1,000 feet. So you want to just make sure you know your altitude. Now, when we talk about pressure and water bath canning, many people will probably choose the water bath. There's not a significant difference in that time, about less than 10-minute difference. And the process to the pressure canning often is more time intensive by the time you bring it down, let it depressurize, open it, all those things. So generally, I would say for your blueberries, most people are going to be doing the water bath method, but you can pressure can if you choose to. Some recommendations on how much blueberries you need. 12 pounds of blueberries per canner load will give you 7 quarts, and 8 pounds will give you about 9 pints. You want to choose your ripe sweet berries with a uniform color. And when you are doing the canning for the blueberries, you want to either do a hot pack or a raw pack method. And so hot pack is meaning that you're going to heat your berries in boiling water for 30 seconds and drain. And then you're going to fill the jars and cover with a liquid. Typically it's a hot juice, but you could certainly use just water if you choose to, but that hot juice, that sugar is just going to help preserve the color and that texture a little bit better. And then we want to leave a 1/2 inch headspace. The raw pack method basically is just going to mean that you're going to fill your berries. You want to shake them down so that they kind of separate, or not separate, but so they kind of settle and fill all the cracks. And then you're going to cover with your hot syrup, juice, or water. You're going to leave that 1/2 inch headspace. Now, the benefits of both hot pack, you do cook the berries slightly, so you kind of naturally shrink them down and lose some of that water early. So you have less shrinkage that happens in that hot pack method versus the raw pack method. But the raw pack method, you have one less step of having to heat the berries first. You can just automatically fill them and cover with hot water. So it's really a preference. You might try both methods to see which way you like better. However, if you are making jams or syrups or anything else, these instructions are strictly for if you just take your whole berries and want to process them as whole. If you are making jams, syrups, or any other recipe that has blueberries that you're canning, you will want to make sure that you are following the instructions and the processing times for those specifically. A lot of jams are going to be like 10 minutes or less, and so you just need to make sure that you're following the instructions for whichever method and recipe you're doing. You can't dehydrate. If you dehydrate, just remember that dehydration has the greatest negative loss of those anthocyanins, the antioxidants, but you can do them. You're still going to get the fiber and other nutrients from it. You're going to wash and dry them, and then you're going to dry in a single layer in your dehydrator for about 12 to 24 hours. Again, watching them, each dehydrator is going to be a little bit different with how quick they cook, but your berries should be shriveled, but not sticky. You can also dry in your oven at the lowest temperature. This is going to be for 2 to 3 hours. You want to make sure that your baking sheet, is being turned, and then checking them often to prevent burning. You're going to let them cool, and then they can be stored in an airtight container for 6 to 12 months in the pantry, or you can also restore them in the refrigerator if you choose to, and that will kind of extend their shelf life even more. If you are preserving blueberries by dehydration, you could also create a puree and make like a fruit leather instead of doing the strict kind of whole berries. Another option is our freezing. I would say this is probably the most common method of food preservation outside of your traditional kind of canning of jams and jellies. The options here are you can wash and dry your berries thoroughly on a clean paper towel, and then you're going to spread on a single tray and place in your freezer. You're going to kind of do a flash freeze, which is going to get them kind of individually frozen, and then you're going to transfer them to the container bag. This prevents kind of one lump clump of a frozen blueberry chunk. So by putting it individually, when you put it in a Ziploc bag, it's easy to pull out just what you need. The important thing with the freezing is you do not want to thaw before use. So when you are doing your blueberries, they do need to be used frozen. So frozen blueberries can be added to pancakes, to batters, to anything that you're baking, and can be added to smoothies. The other option is that you can crush or press washed berries through a fine sieve or puree in a blender. And then you can mix with some sugar, and basically you get like a puree mix that you can add as well to different foods. The one thing is with option one, there have been some different publications that have said that if you wash your berries first, it creates like a tougher skin. But if you wait and freeze your berries and then wash them after, however, I personally think that that's kind of a pain to wash them after. So I personally have always washed them before and haven't had never any issues. But you might find if you're doing research on this that some people will say to not wash the berries first because of that, it could change the skin texture of the berry. Now, to go through a few of our recipes. As you know, each of these lessons, we always include some recipes for how to incorporate the fruit or vegetable, whatever we're talking about, into your day-to-day. So this was a recipe that we had used for a salads class recently. And so this is a blueberry farro salad. The great thing about blueberries, as I mentioned, they can go in different types of salads. So this is a grain salad, but they certainly also go well in like a leafy green salad. We're using farro in this recipe. You could use any type of wheat berry. You could use quinoa, really anything that you want. I kind of like farro. Barley would also be a nice substitution, which just kind of provides a nice nutty flavor. Then we have our berries, celery, some pepper and onion, and some sunflower seeds to add a nice crunch. The dressing is just a kind of a standard oil vinegar dressing with some different spices of cumin and ground coriander. And then we just sweeten it just slightly with maple syrup, but you could certainly substitute out agave syrup or any other kind of sweetener that cuts the acidity of that dressing. The instructions are there, but basically you make sure that your grain is cooked, add everything, mix your dressing, toss to coat, and then you do want to refrigerate this slightly before you serve it. Again, anytime we're making something, allowing it a little bit of time to sit to allow those flavors to meld together is going to be the best. This is a nice, refreshing kind of summer drink. It's a blueberry and herb sparkling lemonade. So again, taking those fresh blueberries, adding some sweetener of your choice, mixing in some fresh herbs from your garden as well, mint, basil, tarragon, any of the herbs of your choice would work. And then adding some lemonade. This can either be homemade lemonade, it can be a reduced sugar lemonade if you're trying to watch sugar intake. Whatever it is, you can choose which lemonade you prefer. And then you're going to add some sparkling water or some club soda. And you're just going to mix all of these together. You do want to kind of mash some of those blueberries because that is what's going to, as you can see on the right, make this that pretty nice blue color. If you keep the blueberries whole, you're just going to have them as a visual appeal, but they're not going to be able to release as much of those flavors. So you do want to mash them together with a wooden spoon or potato masher and release all those juices as well as the nutrients and the flavor to get the most benefit for this drink. A lemon blueberry Dutch baby. As I mentioned, lemon blueberries go very well together. They pair very nicely in a lot of our kind of pastries and sweet dishes. If you've never made a Dutch baby before, it's basically like an oven pancake. As you can see in this image, it puffs up a little bit on the outsides. It's a fun way to have something different for breakfast besides your standard pancake. So here you can see we have all of our traditional kind of pancake mix of a milk, flour, sugar, salt, eggs, butter, and then we have blueberries. The lemon in this one is a little bit of lemon zest, but then it also uses lemon curd as a little topping on top. Now, you could not use a lemon curd. You could just do lemon zest. You could add some lemon juice into this as well. So the lemon curd is optional, but it does add kind of a nice consistency and nice flavor to this. And then the last one is a grilled salmon with blueberry corn salsa. Salmon is kind of a great avenue for some of our berries, especially like a blueberry sauce. This recipe specifically, though, is not a sauce. It's just really taking some of our fresh blueberries. I like to slice them in half just because of the size. It makes it a little nicer to be kind of what we call like a salsa. And then it has some corn, jalapeno, some chopped red onion, cilantro, and lime juice and salt. So you're going to grill your salmon however you prefer. This has chipotle pepper powder. You can use any spices that you want for your salmon. If you're not grilling it on an outdoor grill, you can grill it kind of cook it on your indoor grill as well and use the same salsa with it. And then you're going to combine just all your ingredients for your salsa. Again, mashing some of those blueberries to release some of that juice. And then you're going to just basically grill your salmon, cook it to your desired preference, and then top with this blueberry corn salsa. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. Again, as always, here is our contact information. Reach out at any time if you have any questions on nutrition, food safety, or health. And then if you want more recipes or more nutrition information, you can sign up for our In Good Health newsletter right there, or contact us at our website and we can get you signed up for that.
See, I am excited to go try some new blueberry recipes. With that, does anyone have any questions for Chelsea? Okay, well, if you do have questions, feel free to always reach out to us. We will be doing more Dig Your Dinners here in months to come. I believe we're going to take a quick break here during the summer months, but they are right around the corner. So be sure to check out our website on the Johnson County Extension page for those new webinars on the way. Thanks for joining us.
Well, if
Go
you are
ahead.
local, we do have our Dig Your Dinner live where we're going to be doing an in-person one in June. So if you live locally and you want to take a tour of the garden as well as taste some recipes and get some more information, we have a Dig Your Dinner live, which will be in June, and that registration is on our website.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, please join us if you are available. Have a great day, everyone.